Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. I'm sure you have heard the news that Kirstjen Nielsen is resigned as the Homeland Security Secretary, which I think doesn't surprise too many people. It was rumored several months ago that she was going to do it, although she did spend the last week or a couple of days or a day with the president on the border in California, dealing with the issue that is down there. And so I want to spend the next segment or two talking about what happens next? And I want to hear from our Democrats. I mean, the Democrats continue to say there's not a crisis on the southern border. Last week, Jed Johnson, who was the head of DHS during the Obama administration, he finally acknowledged that the numbers are devastating, and he said there is a crisis there. 100,000 people were stopped at the border just last month. I mean, there are tens of thousands that are waiting to be seen by a judge to deal with asylum issues, and these are in many cases involving children. So do you think that this is going to emerge, Michael, as another key issue of 2020, because the president is clearly going to be seen on one side, and the Democrats are going to be seen there saying no, 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 without any major answer to the question of people and the onslaught to the country?
Well, let me deal first with whether it's a crisis or not. The situation on the southern border has dramatically changed from my perspective in the last 6 months. 6 months ago, the number of migrants coming through the border was less than half what it is today. All of a sudden, it's escalating the last several months, and we do have a crisis, all right? The problem is we don't know, neither party knows, how are we going to fix this problem? A border wall, we all know, is not going to fix the problem. And plus the fact, a border wall is going to take years to build, right? And we have a short-term crisis.
You don't think it solves the problem, but a lot of Republicans do.
Well, maybe a lot of Republicans do. I don't think it solves the problem. And I will add that I think the president threatening to cut off aid to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras actually increases the problem, because it will encourage more people to flee their native countries and come up through Mexico.
Let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer Nevins?
I think that even getting aside from the wall, and we've had many different people from the Department of Homeland Security, people who work the border, who said, yes, you know what? When we don't have a wall, we need 10 times the people patrolling that wall to keep the people out.
Yes.
Okay, if you're not going to have, so that costs, what does that cost? A lot of money. They're having
Yes.
to pull, just this week, they're pulling 750 officers from our northern border and having them come down to patrol the southern border. And it's things like this, when you don't have a wall or don't have a barrier or a fence or whatever you want to call it, that exacerbate this problem. You know, the Democrats voted for 700 miles of fencing during the Obama administration. Some of that is still being constructed today, and now we have this problem where Nancy Pelosi saying it is immoral. I mean, it's really...
Is one of the other things, though, Brent, that you have, the fact is that those that were coming to seek asylum and were going to the official entry points, they've now been inundated. You have judges, I mean, there's literally 40, 50,000 cases
Right.
of asylum seekers involving children. I mean, how do you, it seems to me that that's the thing that sort of separates, or it's got to wake up the Democrats that this really is an incredibly difficult issue.
I don't know that anything will wake up the Democrats. Certainly the Republicans haven't been awakened. And there's so much ground here to cover. This is a Republican Party problem. The Republicans had the House and Senate for 2 years. They did nothing.
Right.
Donald Trump did them a favor. The shutdown that he forced to the government back in the latter part of last year, you notice he didn't do that prior. He could have, but he was giving the Republican House and Senate a chance to do something. But Messrs. Ryan and McConnell weren't willing. And so now we sit here with a court system that has hamstrung the executive branch. It's no surprise that this has gotten worse in the last 6 months, because the courts have made it worse. They've given encouragement to people to keep coming. The one thing I want to say on the foreign aid piece, it makes every sense to cut off every dollar. None of the dollars we're giving now have stopped anything from happening. None of the dollars we're giving now are making people's lives better. The idea that the money we
If you lose the leverage, the president is arguing, saying the leverage isn't working. If you take the leverage away, what is it that makes those countries want to wake up and help the U.S. more?
If you take the leverage away of, you mean
If you take
threatening
the
to
money
take
away, you take the money away.
Right, well-
if you take the money away, why should those three countries cooperate with the United States
Well,
at all?
Because
But
they
they
want the
aren't-
money back, I
well,
would assume.
and they're not
No?
they're not cooperating now with the money. I mean, I don't understand why you would continue to pay people to behave badly. This problem needs to be solved at the border, not with money being sent to Central America. That's not the solution.
Well, here's something that the president went several steps further last week in talking about the situation at the border, because he spent some time at the border with Secretary Nielsen. And this is what the president said about the United States and whether or not we have enough space to welcome more people from Central America.
This is our new statement. The system is full. Can't take you anymore. Whether it's asylum, whether it's anything you want, it's illegal immigration, can't take you anymore. We can't take you. Our country is full.
Our country is full, is what he said, but he also said the system was full. I mean, I think, the headline was when he said the country is full, because I don't think anybody buys that. But when he said the system was full, could you acknowledge that if there's 45, 50,000 people waiting for judges to deal with asylum, would you say that indicates a system that's broken?
Our immigration system is extremely broken. This has been going on for years. I particularly grew up in the 4th District. I've watched Luis Gutierrez work on immigration for years. Some of you might know I ran against him in 2014, as I wasn't under the impression we were getting anywhere with immigration. And so we are still at a juncture in the United States where we do not have pathways to help people immigrate appropriately. And I do agree that we are in a crisis mode, and our system is not working well right now. We don't have enough judges.
That's well and good, Alexandra, but what are the Democrats going to do about it? Why are they perceived as being anti-solving a problem?
Why were the Republicans against doing anything? And Brent I think
made
said
a point.
the
Brent made a
right
I can
point.
tell you.
That for
Okay.
2 years
Why?
there was total Republican control of the Senate and
I
the House.
totally agree
and,
with that.
And there
I
wasn't
agree
a single
with you.
hearing.
And I agree
not a
with
single
you.
hearing
And I
on the
would
issue.
say in both cases, the Republicans and the Democrats, self-interest played a role there. We all know
Yes.
the Chamber of Commerce and the rest of those cronies have their hooks into the Republican Party. They always have. And those same people want cheap labor, whether it's illegal or what have you. The Democrats, and I will maintain this, and I'm sure you guys would argue with me, want people to be, they incentivize people to come here. The candidates we have running now are running loud and proud about all the benefits they want to give to illegal people. So that's going to increase the flow. They're not interested in decreasing the flow. They want eventually them to become voters. They've said that before, and that's their self-interest. So.
1-800-723-8020. We got callers on the line. They want to weigh in on this. I'm sure you want to weigh in. Is there enough space left in the country? I mean, he's obviously not been to Montana or Wyoming. There's some extra space in this country for people. But the system, do we have enough judges? How many judges do we need to deal with the backlog for us? Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. We're going to go to calls now. Let's go to beautiful Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where Rodney is listening to us on Sirius XM satellite radio tonight on POTUS. Go ahead, Rodney.
Bruce, I'm going to change my subject to what was on the computer to
Okay.
talk about with the current conversation.
Sure.
One thing I want, well, first of all, I think the right and the left are looking at this totally wrong because I think that, look, I'm a moderate independent.
They're looking at, Rodney, they're looking at what wrong? What do you mean? What subject?
The problem at the border
Okay.
and all of that type of thing. Look, when we get I don't believe America at heart is a nationalist country. And once we get past all of the Trump era and the Republicans go back to being Republicans, we're going to need to look at the future, and we're going to need these trading partners in South America, and we need a Marshall Plan to help fix some of the damage that we have done ourselves over the years. And in a vacuum that Trump wants to leave, like he has all over the country or all over the world in foreign policy, that vacuum is going to be filled, and it's going to be filled by the Chinese. And the Chinese are going to want oil and beef and everything that South America can give
Let's
them.
take a break, Rodney. I want to let Jennifer respond to your comment thus far.
It's interesting because I saw the original topic that this guest wanted to talk about, and that was Kasich. And what we just heard was very Kasich-like, and that is a strain. This is part of the issue that Donald Trump is facing. It's this old school Republican network, and I would exclude the Freedom Caucus from that. There are some real conservative Republicans in Trump's corner, but by and large, this whole idea that we need this other way, and Trump's way of dealing with people is this thuggish kind of a thing. I view that as really backward thinking, and I think that this caller, God bless him, kind of exemplifies the difficulties that Trump is having right now.
Well, Jennifer,
then
I
can
will
I ask
disagree
a
with
question?
you.
Go ahead, Rodney, and then we'll go to Michael. Go ahead.
Do you think globalization is going to change anytime soon in the future?
I think that Trump has really struck a blow against globalization. Do I think that he has the power to change the way that the world operates? To some degree, yes, and to a large degree, no. So.
Michael's got a comment, Rodney.
And I agree with the caller. Rodney, I totally agree with you that I think we need a Marshall Plan for Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. We should be investing significantly in those countries to boost their economy and to tackle the gangs so people have less incentive to come to the United States.
Do we need to deal with the practical thing that's going on right now, where you have tens of thousands of people waiting to see a judge? Do we need thousands and thousands of more judges, even if it's on a temporary basis? I mean, if these people are coming, I understand a wall or troops or whatever can stop them from physically getting in the United States. But again, if they're coming here to seek asylum, and we don't have enough people in place to administer that, do we invest money in going out so that we can administer all these people coming towards our border? Or does that just exacerbate the situation and make more people rush towards us? Brent.
I think that if we were, you can't manufacture judges, and they're not parts on an assembly line. We could temporarily appoint emergency judges. I guess I don't know how that would work. The people we have right now who are real judges are behaving so badly and so non-judiciously. The idea that we would sort of deputize other people in the legal system to try to sift through this, I can't even begin to imagine the unintended consequences from that, but I don't think they'd be good. Look, the answer is as simple as it sounds cold. People need to be turned around and forced to leave. They need to be forced onto vehicles and sent back. They can't be here. We want to not say that.
Mexico is now doing that. I mean, the president has demanded that one of the things about closing the border, and one of the reasons why he changed his mind and has now given them a year, is because someone has reported to him that Mexico is taking some of these folks that have snuck into Mexico, and they're sending them back and their children back to where they came from. So Mexico, in some cases, is acting stronger than we are, although they don't have a political opposition down there that is like our political opposition.
So, I'm wearing my business hat, and anytime you have more of something coming in that demands more workers, you compensate for it. And I get that you guys don't want to be open for business, but these are human beings. And I feel like there has to be folks that are qualified to be judges that we can bring in order to assist with this situation. I'm also reminded of Fox accidentally referring to these three, Central American countries as three Mexican countries. And I think this all goes back around to the fact that we have a population of people that just don't want folks that are south of our border coming in, and they're not willing to compromise in any way in order to let them peacefully come here and be in a safe place and grow with us and work hard and be a part of our
Well,
community.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. Let me, as a Democrat, disagree a little bit with Alexandra, because we can't take in everyone. And if you actually look at the next 20 years, we're going to have tens of millions of people potentially around the globe on the march due to climate change, due to at least drought, due to famine, moving to other countries. We've seen what's going on in Europe the last 5 years, and Europe is becoming increasingly a mess on many levels.
Yes.
And I don't know what the solution is, but frankly, there not only needs to be a solution for this country, there needs to be a solution across the globe on how we're going to deal with all these increasingly millions of migrants.
Well, I would say that I have a problem with Guatemalans and El Salvadorans who come over and they go all the way through Mexico and they say, we're here, we want to seek asylum, when there are millions upon millions upon millions of people living very successful, good lives in Mexico. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. People choose to stay in Mexico because there are opportunities in Mexico. So if you're really basing this on, I'm not safe and I have political opposition and I want a better life for my children, there is another option, and that is Mexico. So I think that working with Mexico on that, incentivizing Mexico, whatever we can do to keep more people in a perfectly fine country, which would be Mexico, would benefit us.
I think there's a lot of people that would disagree with you when you say perfectly fine country like Mexico, because one of the reasons why so many Mexicans have come to the United States and continue to want to come here is things are not so great in Mexico.
Well, no, I mean, there's problems there, but there's problems here too. We look at our inner cities, and there is crime-ridden as you would.
Do we need then?
want.
Do we need to then? Is to increase our support of Mexico, our foreign policy and our foreign aid to Mexico, because if we don't think that Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala are doing their job, do we take that amount of money? Do we give it to Mexico in hopes that they're going to deal with it, when we have to understand that Mexico is a corrupt country?
Well,
in
it
a
is
deathly
corrupt
country, in a deathly country where the death rate,
Yes.
murder rate,
Yes.
is exorbitant.
Well, it is, and when I say it's a perfectly fine country, what I mean by that is there are definite possibilities there. There is an infrastructure there. It's not a third world nation, and I think that possibly giving aid to Mexico, possibly building places for people to live as they wait for asylum, so they're not here and
Mexico
clogging
is a
our
third world
system.
country in many parts of the country.
I think they would dispute whether they're a
Well, of
third
course
world
they-
country.
They would, but
The tourist
no,
people
of
would-
course they're a third world country, and they're nothing really now but a drug feudal state. That's what Mexico is. But for people who want to decry the notion of American exceptionalism, here's the problem. We're the greatest nation on earth, whether anybody likes it or not, and that comes with a price. Everybody wants to come here. So our problem is we're a really big draw, and there's not enough seats at the theater. So it's time that we take some really tough action to say no more.
Well-
Everybody that shows up at our southern border to just walk in, they all know they came here and they weren't supposed to. It's not a surprise.
Are we the greatest country in the world if we and our political parties cannot solve this crisis? I mean, this has been going on for 30 years.
We're not the greatest nation on earth because of our political parties. We're the greatest nation on earth because of what we've built and done here by free individuals.
So let me follow up on what Brent said, because I think once again, I think you're hitting really a very strong point. I personally think that I want the United States to be open to people who are seeking political asylum based on legitimate threats to their lives or persecution based on their religion or their ethnicity, et cetera.
That's right.
We
Or
cannot,
their sexual orientation.
or their sexual orientation. Absolutely, thank you. On the other hand, I recognize we don't have the capability of taking in all these economic migrants. My difficulty is I don't know where you draw the line. And that is the problem we are struggling with today, last year, the last 10 years. And, we don't know where to draw the line or how to draw the line.
Well, introducing children to the equation only makes it more difficult. And those people that want to come to the country, whether they're mules or whether they're the gangs in Central America, or a mother and father who want the best for their children. I mean, someone coming to our border who's got 2 or 3 children clenched to them,
Yes.
they go to the top of the line. And when they go to the top of the line, they still have to wait I mean, this is where you've got, almost 60,000 people waiting. They got children clinging to them, which makes the picture look worse. And when you try to put them, gather them, and you put them in a cage, it looks horrible because you put them in a cage. But that's how you can find people. I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly from Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Nice to have you with us. We're having a lot of fun here. Hopefully you're having fun listening to us at home. I hope my voice makes it for the next half hour. We have got great guests. Our Democrats this evening, Michael Bauer is here. Alexandra Eidenberg is here. And on the independent or Republican side, we have Brent Hamachuk, and we have Jennifer Nevins with us. Okay? I almost said you were a Republican. He's not a Republican. He's an independent.
I wish I could
But
be.
but you like Donald Trump.
I
A lot of people on that seat, they're Republicans, but they don't like Donald Trump.
Right.
But you're an independent who likes Donald Trump. So
Well, I wish I could be a Republican. It'd be nice to have a home, but in good faith, I just can't be.
that's okay, as long as you vote. And even if you don't vote, that's okay. Anyway, let's come back and we're trying to solve this issue on the southern border. And I began by asking, could we have a legitimate debate, the Republican position versus the Democratic position? But the Democratic position is very vague. I mean, it's not as specific as Donald Trump's plan, which is to, at least primarily build the wall. But building the wall is not the be-all to end-all. It's these other issues that we're trying to deal with, like the need for more judges, the need to handle, children in a meaningful way. And then, the Democrat, plan for that, just a couple of months ago was, well, we're going to build just X number of beds because because that's all we want is we want to have everybody have a bed. So if we restrict the number of beds, we're going to restrict the number of people coming here. That makes no sense. That is a stupid idea by the Democrats. If you're trying to solve the problem and you have 20,000 people waiting to get into your country and go through the asylum process, maybe you need 20,000 beds. Maybe some of these beds are in Mexico, and Mexico is already cooperating in that respect. But again, to say, well, we're gonna build only 1,000 beds.
But
I mean,
Bruce-
that's a harebrained idea by the Democrat. Would you agree with
Bruce,
that? That's a harebrained idea.
I don't think you're even adequately defining what the problem is. The problem is a twofold problem on the southern border, not a single problem. It's a problem of the number of people coming across the border. It's also a problem of the amount of drugs coming across the border.
Yes.
And keep in mind, 90% of the drugs, according to the DEA, that come across the southern border are coming through U.S. ports of entry on the southern border. And this is creating a major problem in many of our states with the heroin epidemic. So there are many things we should be doing, and we're focused solely on the people coming across, and we're not fixing any of these problems.
Do we need a bipartisan discussion of trying to reduce the appetite for drugs in the United States? This problem is a problem because America is hooked on illicit drugs.
Yes.
Now, again, we had the Nancy Reagan approach and the war on drugs, which I don't think worked. But again, it seems to me like we've kind of thrown up our hands to this issue. But a reality is, if Americans knew, or more Americans knew, or there was a significant campaign to let American citizens know that if they are users of drugs, they are perpetuating this situation which is causing a national security
Right.
problem for the country. Could we have that discussion, or is that too old-fashioned? Jennifer?
We can have the discussion, but then when you talk about what are you going to do about it, like fentanyl, for example, I mean, this is a huge problem.
Right,
There was over
right.
70,000 deaths from fentanyl last year.
Right.
It's absolutely amazing, and a lot of that comes over from Mexico. But where are a lot of people getting that? Through doctors' offices, getting it through all these different chains. It's difficult. How do we attack that problem? It's another drug war. Yeah, we probably need another drug war, but then that's a whole nother apparatus in and of itself, and it's just, frankly, it's just overwhelming. I don't know what the solution is.
Brent?
The war on drugs failed.
Yes.
This is a demand-side, market-based activity. It's not a supply-side activity. It's driven by demand. You talked about Americans having this appetite for drugs. We do. So if there's going to be I don't know about a discussion or conversation, I'm never quite sure what those actually mean when it involves politics. It just seems to be people giving speeches. But until we get to the point where we find some way to get most people to not want to introduce bad substances into their individual bodies, we'll lose the war on drugs every time. It's a demand-side problem, and demand's huge.
Right.
Is there any way to have a conversation about this issue so more and more Americans understand that involving themselves in the drug trade by participating, they are creating a national security problem at our border, which is causing tens of thousands of women and children coming to our border, and and there's no room for them, and maybe we have to put them in a cage or whatever it is. But those people wouldn't be coming if the attraction and the flow of drugs.
So the drug crisis is completely bipartisan. It's nonpartisan.
Yes, it is.
It is. I think we've gotten to a point in our nation where it's either you're a progressive Democrat or you're a right-wing person, and there's no conversation any longer. I've actually had the pleasure of talking to Brent quite a few times, and we probably agree on absolutely nothing, but we have wonderful conversation of which we can come on the other side and have an answer. And I think that in today's day and age, our politicians are no longer to a point where they can agree to disagree in order to move our country forward, and it's really terrifying. Right now, my organization, We Will, is supporting Legalize Illinois, which is to legalize marijuana, and there's research behind legalizing marijuana to help the heroin epidemic. But ultimately, at the end of the day, until we're all willing to deal with the problem, and for me, I think it's grassroots. It comes down to town halls in every single state, having the conversation, bringing your local legislators together and dealing with a problem, because it's affecting so many families, everyday lives. The border is a larger crisis with it, but really it's infiltrated everywhere. It's affecting all economic levels. And I think that these are the kind of issues that if we can't come together on some of the bigger things, let's come together and protect people.
You know, years ago, the U.S. Solicitor General issued a report on smoking and discussed how many, in his report, talked about how many people, tens of thousands of people are dying every year from lung cancer due to smoking. And there was a concerted effort in this country, a public relations effort, among other things, but also laws passed to discourage people from smoking. Frankly, we need the same thing on these illegal drugs, on fentanyl, on cocaine, to discourage people from consuming, and also that people who are in the middle stream of being suppliers are frankly killers.
Well, and
They are killers, and they should be treated as killers by the criminal justice system.
I would agree with you, and I think that your example of smoking is a good one because it used to be everybody smoked. My parents smoked, everybody smoked. Now it's kind of hard to find. It's right, but that didn't
you look
take
down
place.
at people who smoke.
You do, but that took place over a period of decades, really.
Yes.
It ratcheted down from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and unfortunately, we just don't seem to have that kind of time because unlike with smoking, people die from smoking, but that's a longer game.
Yes.
People are dying, and I
But
don't think we have that kind of time.
Does there need to be a discussion? One of the other things is that, you know, the anti-smoking campaign, it was bipartisan. That's the way I remember it. It was congressional. It was going on at the state level. It was going on culturally. It was going on a variety of different areas. I wonder whether there is the political will, either from Republicans or Democrats, to say, let's have another discussion like this. Because I think too many politicians, they're worried about that they're going to lose the youth vote if they don't come out in favor of legalization of recreational marijuana. And any conservative that comes out and does it, they're going to say, this is, Nancy Reagan reincarnated, and the war on drugs is pretty much laughed off now as a bad idea.
Look,
right?
I'm a recovery guy, and I can tell you that people introduce substances into their body to excess because in one shape, manner, or form, they're trying to escape from something. So, and they're trying to alter the reality they're in so they can get out of it for just a moment to make it be something they think might be better or tolerable. So the conversation, if we're going to have one about drug use in America, is to try to find out why it is that so many people feel the desperate need to escape.
Right.
That's the problem. I don't have any kind of answer for that. I know why I felt like I needed to escape, but that doesn't do anybody else any good.
Is it insurmountable? The thought that I've just stated, is this an insurmountable challenge to this country?
I don't think any of the problems we're discussing are insurmountable. What I fear, maybe what causes us to think it's insurmountable is, frankly, the lack of a political will to tackle some of the major issues we're facing.
And is it also that we are at a point in this country where it is so much more important for politicians to be a Republican or a Democrat and do things for the good of your party, for the perpetuation of your constituents? That's more important than doing something that's good for the United States of America as a nation.
It seems to be about the constant ability to get reelected, and all of us have mentioned that in different ways. Instead of moving the nation forward and maybe not being reelected again, it's all about, what do I need to say in order to get reelected? And that's what we hear continually on both sides.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I'm going to give a shout out to my guy Trump. Is not as obnoxious as that might seem in the context of this discussion, but there are times when we have seen politicians, and Trump is one of them, step outside of their political box, and Trump did it with prison reform, which was not a big deal among the conservatives. I have to say, he took a lot of flack for conservatives for doing that, but he felt, and I agree with him, and a lot of people do, I think, at this table, that that was something for the good of the people. So yes, I think that it can be done, and it needs to be done.
There's a First Step Act video out there on YouTube from NBC from an event at the White House last Monday.
Right.
I urge everybody to watch it. It was the president with people who had been released from prison for nonviolent crimes who had been there a long time, one after one testimonials. It's moving. There's moments that are funny, and there's moments that brought tears to my eyes.
One of the great important political movements of the last 50 years. I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly. Bruce DuMont, go ahead, say what they've said.
Somebody just texted me and said, "Where are the fights?" So I think
We got
it's
15 minutes
We
left.
gotta
Yeah,
do it on the
we
whole.
gotta get in
We
a
don't
fight.
always have fun. Let's go to Mike in Spokane. Perhaps he can say something that gets everybody fighting each other. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for taking my call. So
By
I'd
the
like
way,
to talk
my
on
condolences to the Zags for bowing out
Oh, I
early
know.
in the Final Four.
Well, yeah, we got to the final.
Not the
we got to
Final Four. They were long gone.
Final eight. Yeah, final eight. But we're proud of Gonzaga. Very proud. I'd like to talk about Venezuela, but with marijuana, as you know, Bruce, Washington State legalized this 3 years ago, marijuana.
Right.
And what we're finding is that AAA had done some surveys, American Automobile Association, recently, and the number of accidents have gone up, partly because of marijuana use. We're also finding that where they grow this marijuana on the farms, the odor goes hundreds of yards, 500 yards, 600 or more, causing homes to decrease in value. And we have churches here with marijuana shops 50 feet from churches. So it is a growing problem here.
Okay.
But I would like to talk about Venezuela, if I could. The growing crisis in Venezuela, and the shortage of food in Venezuela, the lack of electricity, and now we have Russians who have 100 troops in Venezuela, and the Chinese who are active in Venezuela, migration from Venezuela. Where is President Trump on Venezuela and the presidential candidate?
Okay, let's
Thank
that's a good point. I'm going to start with you, Jennifer, and try to put it in the context of at least some criticism that has come of the president in recent days, and that is sometimes the president takes a real hard stand,
Yes.
like he was going to shut down the border, and then he backs away from it. He also has said similar things about Venezuela. So it's sort of off the front burner right now, but it's still cooking out there. And as Mike suggested, enemies of the United States they've not taken it off their front burner.
No, and I'm not up on exactly what his last statement on Venezuela was, but I do want to speak to what you just said about Trump kind of floats these trial balloons, I kind of like to call them, where he makes a statement like, I'm going to close the border down, and then he retreats from it. And I heard somebody on Fox make a really interesting analysis, and they said, when Trump does that, what happens? The Democrat candidates come out, and they make their own statements, such as when Trump said, I'm going to shut down the border, Kamala Harris said, well, I think that we ought to give illegals this and this and this and this.
And abolish
and
ICE.
It brings them, right, it brings them kind of out of the woodwork. And so this person was surmising that this is something that Trump uses as a mechanism, as a tool to bring the opposition out into the field. I don't know if that's true. If it is, I think that that's really kind of awesome, but but it is something to think
Alexandra?
I think he's purely disorganized and not calculated in his actions, and it's just like rash when he does things in that way. That doesn't warrant or give merit to Democratic candidates acting in their own way. I don't want to say that because he's doing one thing, they should do another, but it is not impressive to me to have a president who just randomly says really intense things that are meaningful and affect people.
But initially he was getting support from Republicans and very muted opposition from Democrats, with the exception of Bernie Sanders. He was getting pats on the back for doing some positive things insofar as Venezuela is concerned.
I think he's done great things as far as, I like his policy toward Venezuela. He has upped the sanctions. He is literally criticizing Maduro, he or Pence. They are giving great verbal support to Guaido, the opposition leader.
But what about, as Mike suggests, what about China? What about Russia? The fact that there's some Russian troops there.
So Russia put in some
stood by
troops.
with that.
I would draw the line at putting our own troops in Venezuela. So there's a limited amount we can do, but at the bully pulpit is a very powerful pulpit to use.
Brent?
Look, Venezuela is a mess of Venezuela's own making. I don't see it as being an issue that the United States ought to be terribly concerned about. I'm sorry, I don't. Right now, they've gone from a dictator to a socialist to having a socialist waiting in the wings to take over from the other socialist if they can get that sorted. I'm disturbed a bit at having a handful of Russian troops in our hemisphere. Brings back, thoughts of Jack Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. We could fire that all up again. But the truth is, this just isn't an American problem. And the idea that we're supposed to do something to affect an outcome in Venezuela, it's beyond me. Last time I checked, segment or two ago, we were talking about our own problems here in the United States. Venezuela is not one of them.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for your call, Mike. The congressional Democrats want to investigate Donald Trump. They now want his tax returns. Nick Mulvaney was on the news this morning and said absolutely they're never going to get them. That we're still waiting for the Mueller report. The Democrats want all of it. They want all of the evidence. Are they asking for too much, Michael?
It's not that they're asking for too much. I will tell you my concern. What's fascinating to me is I think most Democratic voters, don't really care very much about the Mueller investigation, the Mueller report, the investigations being done by these committees. What they're concerned about are real issues. What are we doing about the economy? What are we doing about jobs? What are we doing about immigration, et cetera? And the problem is,
I'm going to
I'm sorry,
reaction from
okay.
Jennifer.
I think the average rank and file Democrat does believe that. Unfortunately, the leadership just wants to stick it to Trump. I think there is a divide there. I think you're right, Michael. I do.
Okay, on that note, that last word was from Jennifer Nevins and also Brent Hamachuk. Thank you very much for being with us. A nice job on your maiden voyage. And Elizabeth Eidenberg, thank you very much.
Alexandra Eidenberg.
Alexandra, what did I say? Elizabeth?
You got my name or I got your
What
name
did I
wrong.
say?
It's
Oh, I
okay.
got it. Okay. Alexandra Eidenberg and Michael Bauer. We thank you very much for being with us. Our thanks to Sam Greenberg and Fritz Goldman for their assistance in the production of this program. And we say farewell to our longtime engineer, Sam Greenberg. He's going on to greener pastures. I'm Bruce DuMont. Good night from Chicago.